Hugo Martin, our new art director at id Software.
How's it going? So yeah, I'm the art director at id Software now, and working on a lot of really cool projects that I'm not supposed to talk about. But they're all really cool. But I want to take you through some of my work real quick. And so I started out in the illustration department at Pratt Institute. And then I worked for 2 years in animation at MTV Animation in New York City. And then I worked in the IP development department at Wizards of the Coast. And from there, I went back to school for automotive design at Art Center College of Design, and then moved into the entertainment industry right after that. My first job out of school was for Naughty Dog on Jack X Team Racing, and then worked on Uncharted 1, the first game. It's a really cool time to be at Naughty Dog because they were transitioning from making more stylized, cartoony games to Uncharted-type games, which was a really exciting time for the company. After a couple of months on that, I went to Blur Studios to work in their cinematics department, and we did all kinds of really cool stuff there. It's really cool when I come to this presentation at QuakeCon because I get to see like a ton of Blur's work. They did the Elder Scrolls stuff and a lot of the really cool trailers that you guys see. So, so after that, I went freelance on my own, working out of my studio as a design consultant, and then in-house whenever possible for about 3.5 to 4 years, and worked on a bunch of really cool projects. A lot of them are in development. You know, the rule is unless it's been announced or released, you can't really show any work from it or talk about it. So some of that stuff is in here that has been released, but a lot of it isn't. And it was really fun. And the most notable from that period was most definitely Pacific Rim. That was a really, really fun project to work on. Very exciting. I got the phone call from a friend of mine, Francisco, who said, hey, you know, I recommended you to come down to, we're forming an art department here for this movie. If you want to come join me, I think it'll be really cool. I was like, hell yeah. So I went down there. I got a call from his producer. They told me about it, gave me the address to Guillermo's production house. And it turned out to be like a real house. Like when I actually got there, it was, I'm like, this is like someone's home. So I walked up to the steps and rang the doorbell and like had my laptop in my hand. And Guillermo opens the door and he's like, welcome, my friend. I was just like, oh my God, you're the guy. And, you know, and you know, I didn't know what to say. I was like, I'm here to draw, you know. So he motioned me to come back into his house, and we set me up in his office. He turns his garage into like an office, a work art department pit, and then he would write in the room adjacent to ours. Like he, you know, it was really cool. He'd come in about twice a day and check up on our stuff, and it was a very exciting time. But the work that I was doing leading up to that is some of this stuff. So this is some projects that we'll hit a Pacific Rim again at the end of the presentation. So here's some Blur stuff. This is a pitch painting for a project that's in development right now, city in the mountains. This is for Force Unleashed. That was a really, really fun project to work on. The cinematics were awesome. This was for Dante's Inferno, which was really, really fun to work on. There's a lot of great, great cinematics that Blur did for this project. This is for Halo Wars. So this is basically the kind of stuff that I was trained to do in school, which was a lot of industrial design stuff. That's really my favorite thing, is doing hard surface like mechs and all kinds of really cool looking tech type stuff. This was the Halo Spirit of Fire ship. Really cool story. Someone actually built this out of Legos, which is like the size of a dining room table. And he like had it on a blog, and he was giving updates as he was making progress shots. But he was doing it off of like random screenshots. So me and the modeler at Blur who modeled this, we sent them our concept stuff, which I don't know if it was obnoxious or really nice. Because we were like, hey, we want you to get this right. So, but it was really cool. And this is for pitch art for Ghostbusters. So, you know, a lot of what a concept, you guys are all, I'm sure, familiar with concept art, right? And, you know, and everything. So, like, you know, we start with, there's just basically, especially for this kind of work, keyframe art, it's usually just ideas on a page. So it'll be like me, the director, and a producer, or or me, that's the case in a movie, or in a video game, it's like me, the game director and the executive producer of the game, and then I'll start doing paintings based on, you know, their script or their game doc or whatever it is they have to try and, you know, get the project greenlit. If it's already been greenlit, then maybe we're already establishing like levels and stuff like that. So this is more of that kind of work. It's like a look and feel painting for a moment in a cinematic that Blur did, which was really awesome. This was the Hellgate Hunter for the Hellgate game, which was really fun to work on. They actually made a toy of this guy, and I didn't get any money for it. But that's okay. It's a pitch painting for exactly what I just described. You know, like a company has an idea, they want to see it illustrated, and I knock out a painting for them. This is for Jack X Team Racing. This was such a fun game to work on. You know, this game taught me a lot. It was like, ultimately, I solidified like my mantra in my career is I just want to draw and paint really cool stuff. Like, that's it. You know, I love design, so if it's futuristic or really hardcore fantasy, then I'm totally into it. And when I showed up there, it was my first job out of automotive design school, and the director, Bob Raffi, who's gone on to become a really good friend of mine, I've done a lot of work for him. He was the art director at Naughty Dog at the time. And he's like, well, I want you to do like 25 combat racing vehicles. And he's like, the look is I want a Lamborghini mashed with an Abrams tank and something awesome. Which I was like, I can't. I was like, are you serious? Like, you're going to pay me to do this? This is awesome. You know, like, I had so much fun. It was really, really cool. This is for the Force Unleashed trailers. We did a whole bunch of those. It was really, really fun to work on. So cool to like do paintings of like your favorite characters. It's a mech for a film that was in development at Blur. 3-stage mech. First stage is a crawler, second stage is a flyer, third stage is a walker. That's one of my things in design is that I think anytime you get a dramatic change in the silhouette, it usually makes a really dramatic and lasting impact with your audience. So when you think about like the alien, his silhouette changes considerably. When you see him from the front view, it's really narrow. When he turns his head, it's a really drastic change. And then on top of that, he opens his mouth, and the second mouth comes out. All those changes make for like a really lasting impression with the audience. So anytime you could do that in design, it's really important. So that's really the idea behind that kind of stuff. It's kind of like the Predator too. Remember when you first see the Predator, you think that's his face, but then he takes off his mask and he has another face, and then he's got like the mandibles and then the second mouth on the inside. Just a lot of changes, and that's the kind of thing that really makes an impression with the audience. This was a fun project. It was for a pitch. Well, I probably can't say specifically what it's for, but the bottom line is. It was for a group of girl superheroes, and I went to they needed a vehicle, so I went to the cosmetics section of CVS, and I got a bunch of women's, I bought a bunch of women's products, and then I splayed them out on my desk, and I started designing based on those shapes. So the overall shape is based on a compact. It got hot curlers on the back, and yeah. My boss, he sees all this stuff on my desk. He's like, "What are you doing?" Like, what? I'm like, no, this is good. This is going to work out good. So these are for, yeah, right? When I showed up at the counter, I had like a bag of stuff. So these were, a lot of what we do is color keys, like establishing the lighting of scenes, whether it's for movies or cinematics or games or whatever. If I was working at a game company, I'd get shots of the game in progress, and I would do like paintovers for lighting, which is really important. Obviously, you could tell a story with the lighting. You could direct the viewer's eye with the lighting. You know, like if you have a series of doors that you want the player to walk through, but you want him to kind of get the hint that you want him to walk through that door, just by using lighting alone, you could really direct his focus, which is really important. As many of you know, when you go to the wrong door and you try to open, it's not open. It gets kind of frustrating. So. You do it right, the player will know exactly where to go. And this is for Dante's Inferno. It's a cathedral where they get married. So this is Pacific Rim. And that movie was, did everybody see that movie? Yeah. That movie was awesome. It was really good. The script was amazing. I mean, like, we got, Yeah, it was just crazy. Like, when they first told us what it was, they're like, the basic pitch is like, you know, these creatures start attacking our cities, and missiles and tanks don't work, and the only way to destroy them is melee style. You have to physically rip them to pieces. So each country builds a champion to protect its city, which like gave me the chills. I was like, I can't, this is nuts. Like, I'm so excited to work on this. So Guillermo put together his core team of guys. It's a very collaborative process. So both in games and in film, like everything that you see is a lot of people contribute to it to make it look great, especially when you see it, the final product on the screen. So he had a core team of guys, and we would pass around designs to each other, and one guy might start something, another guy might work on it for a couple of days, and then someone else might finish it, or ILM might add something to it. So yeah, that's the other thing too, is at the end of the project, ILM gets it, and I mean, they're like geniuses, so they make everything look awesome. So it was really cool all the way, and Legacy did some work for us, and then also Spectral Motion built like these maquettes of the Jaegers that were really incredible. And each time someone would work on it, it would just get cooler and cooler. So it was really fun. So this was the first Jaeger on the project to get approved by the Legendary guys. Francisco Ruiz did a sketch of this guy, and then Guillermo asked me, here, take a pass on this. This was my design on it, and he gave it the thumbs up and said, okay, this is the direction we're going to go, which was really crazy because at the time, like, I don't know, you just never knew how we were gonna, how it all was gonna work out. You know, there's a lot of different ways you could have went with the Jaegers. So finally, going in this direction was really exciting for me. And then once we had that approved, then you started turning it around and doing orthos, fleshing out the design, establishing the proportions, making sure that it looks really cool, but it could also actually move its arms and stuff like that. The little drawing up in the right-hand corner is just my overly simplified way of working out the joint mechanics in my head. So that way when I actually, that's like a balance. It has to look awesome, but it also has to work, you know, so it's tricky. My time at Blur Studios really helped me with that because I remember when I first got there, you draw like this guy with this huge spikes on his shoulders, and it would look super awesome. And then the animators and the riggers get it, and as soon as he lifted his arm, he'd like impale himself in the head. So then they'd send it back to us. They'd be like, yeah, so that looks really cool, doesn't work. And so I kind of was always really conscious of that on this movie. So working out the side view proportions, and a lot of the stuff you see, if you look at the back of his foot, you'll see like this piston on the rear part of his heel. And that was kind of simulating like what an Achilles heel would be on a human being. And that became like a big thing with our design of the Jaegers. Is Guillermo loved the idea of like mimicking human anatomy with the robot's structure. So he thought that idea was really fun. Once I heard that and he liked it, I started pushing more of that stuff into the Jaegers as I went along. Like you'll see like the jawbone on the side of this guy's face. Guillermo loves secondary animation. That's something that he always looks to like. He would really emphasize that we would do that on the film. So the clarinet buttons on the back, they would actually flutter when he would move around. I think that's my son somewhere. So yeah, and he really liked that kind of stuff. And overall, the shape of the stem in the back is supposed to kind of simulate a brain stem, you know, and kind of have like a sort of a cranial kind of a look. So we did these drawings, and Legendary was really into them, and Guillermo liked them. But you definitely wanted to see them. I wanted to see it put into its context, so did they. You know, because that scale-wise is hard to kind of tell just how big it is, and will it actually read convincingly on screen. So I did this painting, and just to show, put it in its context. And really quick, when I started doing these keyframe paintings, you know, for me, it was all about scale references. So after a while, I couldn't do a painting without putting a helicopter in there, which I thought was really cool, because when you saw the movie, they always had like Chinooks and stuff flying around the Jaegers, which I thought was really cool. So I even titled this one Release the Titan, because Legendary also made, I think they made Clash of the Titans. I thought it was a good line. Excuse me. So then after that, we started, like, seeing them like this was cool for modeling purposes and being able to send to ILM. but seeing like this was really good for story, and then this was good for the overall presentation. This is what we would show to like, everyone, really put it in a proper context. We got the helicopter in there for scale, a dead kaiju in the water with the kaiju blue blood that we put on everything. And you'll notice that he's got kaiju blue like dripping all over his fists and stuff like that. And rendering this stuff was really just amazing. I would just sit at work every day and be like, this is just so awesome. I can't believe they're going to make a movie like this. And I have to say, like, the movie just completely blew me away. It was even cooler than I thought it was going to be. And so after I was done with my contract there, I worked at Guillermo's house, and then we moved up to Toronto for like 3 or 4 months, and then I had to go home for various reasons, and he gave me some assignments to take with me. He asked me to do final front and back designs of the characters, like full-blown, and his note to me was like, I want to see as much detail as you can design in there as possible. He's like, he joked that he would threaten he'd zoom in and make sure that I really got like every inch. So I was like, I swear, Guillermo, I'm gonna render the life out of this thing. So I just sat there and zoomed into the pixel, and literally, I wish I could zoom into these now, because if you did, you'd see that there's like signage and marks, and the fingernails got shapes in them, and the pistons and the gears and the hips. It just took forever. It was definitely one of the most challenging things that I ever did. But ultimately, like, they really helped establish sort of the final look of the Jaegers. So Gypsy Danger, he was really cool. He started out as a concept that was done by Oscar Ciccione, which, if you guys have the Art of book, it's in the Art of book. And the next page, you'll see the one that I did. So Guillermo wanted us to try some things with it. He said he really liked it, but he just wanted to see what I would do if I took a pass at it. So I was really excited, because I knew he was going to be the hero of the film. But I didn't necessarily want to change the design so much. I just kind of looked at what Oscar had done. I thought, well, what can I bring into it? It was such a cool design. So I gathered up my reference folders. That's the first part of my process, is to figure out who the character is. You don't just start drawing like cool shapes. You have to kind of figure out who the essence of the character is. And for me, I was just digging around the internet, and I thought, well, Stryker's this advanced. We talked about him being like a football player type, and some of the other ones have very distinct personalities, but I'm like, who's Gypsy? I know Guillermo had him as like a cowboy gunslinger, but so what do I bring to it? And I was like, well, I kind of see him as like an MMA fighter, sort of that kind of a build, lean, which is sort of very versatile. And then since he's the American champion, he's our hero. What's a famous piece of machinery from war, from World War II that I thought people look at and they have a lot of nostalgia for, and it was that jet on the right, which I don't forget the name of what that is. Does anyone? Corsair. There you go. And then the American flag, of course. But I didn't want to kind of like be really corny with any of this stuff. Like, I couldn't cover them in red, white, and blue. That would be ridiculous. And even though George St. Pierre is Canadian, he's not American. But it was more of just like his face in that picture and his presence. So then from that, I did this. And as I was working on it, Guillermo was looking over my shoulder, and with everything, he's really the conductor of all this. He's always giving you notes, and they're amazing. He's incredibly creative. Guy's like a fountain of creativity. And but he greenlit it each step of the way, and I kept going and, finessing the details and tweaking the proportions and adding in a lot of like the little signage, and really as subtly as I could, sneaking in the American flag without overstating it, and getting a lot of that Corsair sort of navy steel color in there. And eventually the executives saw this, and they really liked it, so it went into the movie. And then the next step was to do a breakout design of the head. And so a lot of this was, again, based on human anatomy. So the piston that you see in the neck was kind of similar to the muscle that we all have right here. And then that steel structure around the bottom of his neck, I told Guillermo, was kind of like a collarbone. And then those were like female actuators, when he would attach, these pistons would lock into those ports, and he'd be able to move his neck around. And it was really crazy to see all that stuff actually make it into the movie. Like, when you see it in a side view, it's all in there, which is really cool. A big thing about the look of these Jaegers that we established at some point was like, well, are they super slick Ferrari-looking machines, like state-of-the-art? Are they like, Porsches? Are they like, what do they look like? And ultimately, it's a war movie. We're basically like World War III. So I started looking at a lot of photos of wartime vehicles, which is, like Abrams tanks, but like in Desert Storm and in Iraq and stuff. And I noticed that there's a lot of personalization that goes on, customization, a lot of grit, a lot of dirt, a lot of wear and tear, and a lot of layering of signage. Like a vehicle might be made in the 80s and have a license number on it, but then in the 90s, someone else buys it. They paint over the license number, then there's a new one, but you can still faintly see the old one. And that kind of stuff went a long way to making this stuff have a lot of character and depth and richness to the surface, which you can kind of see it in here. There's a lot of like subtle markings and things like that. And in the larger ones, this one has a lot of like really subtle faded signage and different things like that. And I think that helps to give it a real sense of character and history, personality that we were going for, which was wartime vehicles. So at one point he gets his head smashed in, and the way that I designed the visors with that, there was this honeycomb screen on it, and I was thinking that there was like a steel honeycomb framework just behind the lens, and then inside each one of those honeycomb steel structures was a camera that then projected the image back into the pilots. So that way when it got split open, you'd actually see these little yellow cameras spill out, because I'm giving it that kind of depth like Guillermo always demanded. That Guillermo doesn't like it when you just design something on the surface. Like you have to, he puts so much thought into everything that he does that you really just, that's what he wants. He wants to hear stuff like that. So I thought it'd be cool because it kind of makes it feel like it's almost like a living thing, like it's bleeding. You cut it open and things spill out of it. And then the honeycomb steel structure on the top of the head is kind of meant to feel like some sort of like a membrane kind of a thing going on. And the stains running down the side of his face was totally supposed to be like the way, like in a good Rocky movie, he gets the cut above his eye. He's got that trickle of blood going down the side of his face. I wanted him to look like a boxer sitting in the corner, getting fixed up. And then this is when he falls in the snow. This was really tough, actually. It's tough for a reason that I never anticipated. Because when I first painted this, I had his head turned to the side, and it looked way too natural. And he has to look like a robot. So if we were to fall like this, we'd turn our face before we fell, because it's just kind of instinctual. But for him, I thought, well, he would just shut off before he fell, and then he would just land face first and not really brace himself. And it was pretty cool, because in the movie, they got him situated just like this. So this was Gypsy Danger's final drawing, and yeah, this was actually the first one that I did when I went home. Again, I really killed myself detailing this stuff out, and it was really, I remember it was like, 2 in the morning, I'm rendering the toe, and I'm like, no one's ever going to zoom in and look at this stuff. I'm like, I know it. And then when they made the making of stuff, they actually zoomed into the image and panned around it and stuff like that. And this has actually been used quite a bit in marketing. So I was grateful. I was like, that wasn't for nothing. This is Chernobog Alpha. Francisco did a really cool drawing of this guy, and then this was my pass on it. And then Oscar Ciccione then took a pass on it after I did my thing, and that was kind of what ended up being in the movie. Really cool character. I love that guy. So this is Echo Taipei. So Echo Taipei started out as a design that Francisco and I worked on, and he was kind of already in the movie and greenlit, and it was all good to go. So it was in Toronto. One nice thing about Toronto is that my wife and kids weren't around, so I didn't have anything else to do but sit around and draw Jaegers, which, that's pretty awesome. So so at night, I would tool around with some ideas, and I started thinking about a gladiator-type mech that would block with his shoulder. And I'm a huge Floyd Mayweather fan, Floyd Mayweather, the boxer, and he fights like that. He does the shoulder roll where he kind of tucks his chin into his shoulder, and he uses his shoulder to block shots, and he puts his hand right here so his chin is protected. I was like, it'd be so cool if like a mech fought like that, like he'd take shots from his shoulder and come back over. So I did these little sketches. I kind of got something that I liked. And then I did this painting. I did it at night because I wasn't assigned to do this painting at first, so I just wanted to kind of get the idea out of my head and be able to show it to Guillermo with like a picture rather than words. It was different in the beginning. It was actually gray, and he had that green V-shaped visor because I didn't know what country he'd fight for. And then Guillermo said, you know what? He's like, I want to see what it looks like when he's red, and take the head on Crimson Typhoon was actually a homage to Hal. That was Guillermo. He was like, no, I want it to look like Hal from 2001. And so he said, put the Hal head on it, make it red, and I want to see what it looks like. So I stayed really late that night, fixed it all up. He came in the next day. We made a few additional tweaks, and he had me put on the double arms, and that was it. He's like, that's Crimson Typhoon now, which I was like, dude, that's awesome. I guess he's probably one of my favorite characters. I love the way his blades spin in the movie and stuff. It's super cool. So after that, the next thing for me to do is, once it's been approved, I do my concept sketch. This is for me, and then I show it to Guillermo. It's very rough. It's just meant to establish the proportions and the overall mechanics of the character. And then from there, I just take the one on the left, once he gives me the go-ahead, blow it up, and make it pretty. So that way people can, it's for presentation purposes. And then from there, zoom in on the head, because these guys were like actors in the film, so their heads were very important. So then I do these quick sketches of breakdowns of how the mechanics in the head would work. I chose the one on the bottom right, blow that up, do like a full concept of it. And inspiration for this stuff for me, aside from establishing who the character was, like for this guy it was Floyd Mayweather and a gladiator and stuff, but I'm looking at a lot of my old sources, which is that's my kid. I'm looking at Audi. I'm looking at Ferrari. I'm looking at industrial design stuff, fashion stuff, really anything, architecture. Mostly cars, because I'm a huge fan of cars. But yeah, there's all kinds of. There's probably a lot of Audi shapes in here, especially in the neck. And then this was his ortho. These things, after a while, I mean, I guess they got faster, not really. There's just so much detail in there. They were really difficult to do. The hardest thing to do was to figure out how to get the paneling to be the correct scale. So I had to, if you made the paneling too wide and too overstated, they looked really small. In 2 seconds, because these shapes are really kind of like exaggerated proportions, they could look like toys in a second. And you'd feel it when you're rendering it. I'd kind of render it for 2 hours. I'd step back and be like, dude, that looks like a toy, Or he looks like he's 50 feet tall. He doesn't look like he's 50 stories tall. So then I started, the thing I said about the signage, that went a long way. I started looking at giant nuclear submarines. I started looking at aircraft carriers for the way that they handled the subtle paneling. You notice like it's very subtle ridges in there. And that's ultimately proved to be the answer, was getting the paneling just right. And then the weathering, it's like just making them feel. And that's the other thing, too, is that giant objects weather different than small objects. Like a car is going to weather, in terms of how the dirt cakes up in the corner, it's going to look totally different than the way that does, let's say, on an aircraft carrier. If you overstate something like that, again, it would literally, and through the course of a night of me working on these, there'd be moments where he looked 10 feet tall and moments he was the correct size, and then I messed up and he was too small again. This Coyote Tango started out as a sketch from Francisco. This was my pass on it. This Coyote Tango's head. Tacit Ronin. So there was a Japanese robot in the film. He's in the prologue, and the story changed, and his role got reduced in the film, but you might see more of them. I have no idea what his role will be in future projects, but I heard from Travis Beacham, the writer, that they are making a graphic novel about him, or putting him in a graphic novel, and that's his rendering. It's kind of cool because I remember with this one, it was up on the wall, and he was the Japanese robot, and then, like I said, story changes, but I was like, you know what, if this makes it in the Art of book, I bet you the fans will sort of gravitate to him, kind of like they did with Boba Fett in Star Wars. And I always kind of check online. I type in Tacit Ronin. I want to see like what people think. And he's getting a little bit of a following, as are some of the other robots in the book that didn't have as big a roles in the movies. So this is the Conpod arms that they used, that the Jaeger pilots would hook into. These were the first concepts for them. They looked really cool. They didn't work as efficiently as they should have. They took up a lot of space, but they looked cool. So then Ty Ruben Ellison did a design of them on the right. He built it in SketchUp, and it actually, was able to function, and it fit the space perfectly, so it didn't take up too much room. And then Guillermo asked me to do a pass on it, as I did with everything else. This was a pass for the Echo Beijing, Crimson Typhoon Conpod. So the way I see this stuff was I really just treated it like shell casings on a motorcycle, or like fairings on a motorcycle, where these would just be like vacuum-formed fake parts and pistons that they would just attach to the actual armature itself. So that way you could kind of make, each one of these Conpod sets look completely different. When it's all fake, it's all really the same structure. You're just kind of, putting a new shell on it. And again, like, this is the trans stuff. I mean, that's basically like inspired by motorcycle parts and things like that, which I love. I love sport bikes. I put sport bikes in like everything I do. So this is Crimson Typhoon's Conpod. It's based on like a temple. I found some pictures of a Chinese temple and a bunch of other pictures. I just typed in temple, Asian temple, and then grabbed the motifs that I found in there. Those two giant structures on the right, it'd be cool. They'd be like drums, You'd see. I don't know if those drums are actually in Chinese temples. I was just going on very broad racial stereotypes, and so, and then the bottom Guillermo loves to see secondary animation, and in Ty's layout actually Ty did a layout for the base of this stuff that again, just same thing with the arms. He did like a layout of the inside of the room, which was super cool, and then we just did design work over that. And I wanted to accentuate like sort of the moving parts in the bottom, so it'd almost be like when you press a key in a piano, you'd see all this fluttering on the bottom. So it was really fun. And then Guillermo actually told me to put these markings in the back that you'll see, these little markings in the wall. They mean something. I forgot what he said. But so Ty Ruben did, again, I took his Conpod concept, and I did that he made in SketchUp, and I did this painting just to kind of show you what a quick idea of what a final shot would look like on screen of the Conpod with all the lighting and the atmosphere and everything like that, all under the direction of Guillermo, of course. And he would kind of tell me. By then, I kind of had a sense of the things that he likes. He's got a really, really cool aesthetic. He's so bold with color. He loves color, which I think you could totally see in the movie. Like Hong Kong just looked amazing, and he really pushes you in that. He pushes you in every way. Like from a design standpoint, really emphasizes like a strong silhouette and use of color. Bold use of like volumetric lighting and things like that. So after a while, you sort of had an idea of what it was that he liked, and so when I made this image, I was definitely going off of all the things at that point I kind of picked up on that he likes to see in his images. He's such a cool guy to work for too, because as soon as he's a real straight shooter. Like as soon as he walks by, if he likes it, he just right away. He's like, I love it, and then or he'll be like, I don't like it. You're just like, oh, okay, sorry. But which made you feel great, It was awesome. You always knew where you stood. And you really, films is funny because making games is like a marathon. Making a movie is like a sprint. So it's like, and it's month-to-month contracts, so you really just kind of have to perform. And if you don't perform, they don't renew your contract. So, and you can feel that pressure is good. They just don't have the time to in a game studio, we have associate level artists and we develop them, and it's okay if you didn't get the design right, we'll just keep working on it. But in film, it's like, oh, you didn't get that right, next, So I definitely wanted to do good. You always feel that on a film that you want to do the best work you can as soon as possible. This was the Conpod boot. And the hand controls that they went over their hands. This is one of the doorway concepts for the Jaegers. I was thinking when I was doing this stuff from a lighting standpoint and overall texturing that, they spend a lot of time in the ocean, salt water. So I was like, it should kind of feel less like, Ferrari, Audi, super slick, and kind of more like a submarine, because everything should have that sort of watertight, saltwater erosion kind of a look. And it was cool to see some of this stuff sort of end up in the movie. And again, everything has rust and chips and crack because it's wartime. That was the look. It was like wartime vehicles and wartime machinery. It's a concept for the elevator that dropped the Jaegers' heads down. It's a really early concept, something that we did way back at his house. It's a concept designed by Ty Ruben Ellison in 3D, and then I did a pass on it. Another concept by Ty Ruben. This is my pass. Again, the wartime influence. This concept for the battery packs. You actually see these battery packs in Gypsy Danger's Jaw. Just random props that you see throughout the film. This stuff was so much to see so much fun to see in the movie. This is a kaiju scanner that I did, and another cryo tank. I actually painted that black in the movie. Ty Ruben did this block out in 3D, and I did a color rendering pass on it. So this is the fuel transport vehicle that I did, and this was actually in the movie, which was so cool. Like, I know, like, you see the Jaegers and everything like that, and that was amazing. It was thrilling to see that stuff walking around on screen. But then all of a sudden I'd see, like, two people talking and this thing drive by. I'm like, oh, my God, there it is. So keyframe paintings was another thing that I did. You saw at the first part of my portfolio that I did a lot of this work before I was in the beginning part of my career. So again, these are used to help sell moments in the movie, help illustrate ideas for the director and the studio head. And this was two early kaiju and Jaeger concepts fighting. It's a layout sketch by Francisco, and then I did this is my painting. It's a painting I did of Bladehead based on a concept by Wayne Barlow, did the concept for Bladehead. He did a sketch of Bladehead. I was like, that's really cool. I'm like, I'd like to do a painting where I put that guy in there. So again, this was one of those things I kind of did on my own. I stayed a little late, did a rough sketch of it, and showed it to Guillermo. He's like, yeah, I like it. Go ahead, keep going. And then, finished it up. And this was one of those things where it was a real good learning lesson about how contrasty and saturated Guillermo likes to go. Because I remember him pushing me to go more yellow. And it sounds ridiculous, but I'm like, really? Like to me, I would have never gone that yellow. But then once I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, that looks awesome. You're right. So yeah, it was really exciting. And I heard this went over really well with in the presentations that they gave. So layout sketch by Guy Davis and a painting by myself, and lots of volumetric lighting. So one of the things that I like to do that you want to create depth in your images. So you use the clouds to cast shadows, and then you have pockets of light, and that helps create a sense of depth and movement throughout your image. As opposed to if I just lit that cliff face completely evenly, it would become very flat. So then I just show that light is breaking through the clouds in just a few spots that kind of, your eye bounces, it becomes like light to dark, light to dark, light to dark. It's a really effective way to take a viewer's eye through an image. And I do it all the time. So layout sketch by Francisco and painting by me. It's just, this guy just got knocked on his butt. And then a painting by myself. Once I left the project, and after I finished my orthos, I got called by Murata, which is a studio that Guillermo's co-owner of, and I went in there as visual development supervisor and worked on the I guess it would be post-production of the film, well, visual effects on the film. So these were some shots in the prologue, and I would do these paintings just to describe some of what happens. And you'll see here, you can, the same thing I said before with that cliff face painting, whereas I use the light, dark pattern to kind of bring your eye through the painting. I'm doing the same thing here. Pretty much I got a couple of rules, and I repeat myself all the time. So, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is the one kaiju that I got to work on. It's, started out as a concept from Wayne Barlow, the blade head thing, and then I did my pass on it, and the final is in the movie. It actually got into the movie, which was really cool. And that's it. I don't think we're having a Q&A, but we could meet afterwards. I'm probably going to be set up somewhere. If you have the art of book or anything like that, or anything you want me to look at or anything like that, I'll be around. But thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. I wish we could talk again more about some of the other stuff, but I'm excited to show it to you soon. So thanks again.